Hello and welcome back to the Believe You Can Paint channel, where today we're going to be painting the Elemental from Descent. I've had this game sitting around for a while, played it once, didn't really get into it honestly, but the minis are pretty good, and I thought this guy would be really fun to try to do a one coat paint job with some contrast paint. So I've got him out, and let's see what we can do. First we need to get him primed up, so we're going to get out our Krylon, and we're going to use our satin almond for this. So I'll do that real quick. Hey, he's done. Okay. Yep, there he is. So let's just go grab our contrast paint. I'm going to do some magic. Wait, that's not contrast paint. That's speed paint. Yeah, so that wasn't magic. My wife bought me the speed paints. She bought me the full line, so they just now came in, and I want to paint this guy up with this. So a little bit of deception back there, but this is the colors I picked. So we're going to do a 6-color paint job. We've got Zealot Yellow, Magic Blue, Holy White, Fire Giant Orange. We're going to do some Blood Red, and then we're going to do some Gravelord Gray. First, we need to mix these up, so I'm going to grab my paint shaker. Yeah, so the Robart Paintshaker. This is just going to be a little extra bit because we haven't talked about this at all. This is the paint shaker I have. I picked it because it was one of the only options out there for a reasonable price, and I like it quite a bit. It just wiggles the paint back and forth. You'll see me pick it up quite a bit because I like to lift it to let the paint shift around, make sure it's getting down in the bottoms, and I try to put balls in all my paint. So I like to get those agitators down and to help out the mixing process. It moves way faster than the camera's able to capture. And so there's a couple times here where it looks really smooth, and I even tried recording at 60 frames per second, and it still just didn't really capture how much vibration there is. But believe me when I say it's a ton. It's going very, very fast, so fast that the camera can't catch it. One tip on the Robart Paintshaker is you want to get some more of those rubber straps. They sell them in packs of 6 as a standalone pack, and you can tell you're going to need them. They get dry and they get worn out, stretched them over the bottles, especially if you stick the Citadel paint pots in there. They're not really well suited for those huge pots, and it wears them out pretty quick. So while we finish mixing these, I want to get into a little bit about speed paint. I'm excited to try it out. I think it's been covered heavily. There was a long build up to them releasing, and they've been a staged release, and there was a lot of product out before they released. So they've been covered quite a bit, but I want to see what they can do. So here's the Army Painter Monster brush is what I'm going to use. I think that's kind of the recommended size for speed paint. And I don't know if I've shown it before, but that's my painting block. It's something I just made for my wrist to rest on. And it really helps when I'm not doing detailed work. I can just kind of kick back and go. So we're going with the Zealot Yellow here. And we're just, again, going to try to do a single coat paint job, kind of the intended purpose of the paint. And let's just see what it's able to do. I think it goes on really, really smooth. And it looks really good. If I was painting these flames by hand, I wouldn't use the Zealot Yellow here probably because it pools to an orange color. And so your flames are actually orange at the base, which is the opposite of what you want. You really want your yellows at the base working up to a red and a darker color. So you'd really want to do like a white, a yellow, a orange, and a red. And this is doing the exact opposite of that. It's starting at orange at the base. But I also thought, how would a new painter paint fire? One, it's a common mistake. People don't realize they're painting their flames upside down. Two, if I was a new painter and I wanted to use speed paints, this is what I would get. So as a single coat, it looks good, but I didn't like the flames too much from a personal perspective. And so I'm going to go back here in a bit, you'll see, and I'm going to go ahead and give it some Fire Giant Orange over the top of that, and then up to a Blood Red, which that was the plan all along because those are the paints I pulled out from the beginning. I expected this to be what happened because the Zealot Yellow is truthfully just Iandan Yellow, but with a redder base. So instead of getting that kind of orange color with Iandan, you get a red. Um, and again, I think it's totally passable, especially for a beginner. Um, and I think it's totally passable even if you're not a beginner, if you just, don't have much scrutiny on your mini and you just want it painted up. I think it's great. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the speed paint real quick. It's just contrast paint. That's my review. The end. Over. See you guys next time. Okay, that's not fair. I need to give it a little more than that because it is an important product and it's an important decision. So it's not just contrast paint. It's chemically different. If you want to see how it's chemically different on YouTube, search for how it's chemically different. There's a couple really good videos. There's no reason for me to say what those people have already said. I'd just be copying them. If you want to know functionally how it's different, um, there's two key things, I think. One, the colors I use in this video have more control than Citadel, and I think it's due to that chemical makeup that it is scientifically different. But I found that it had more control. It felt thicker, though it didn't go on thicker. So that control that you have when you're putting on a undiluted paint or a lightly diluted paint, um, out of the pot, you feel like you have a lot of control. Um, but that's not good coverage. It felt like that, but it gave good coverage. It still went into the recesses just like it's supposed to, um, and it functioned, as designed. So I think it was better than contrast paint in that aspect. Now shifting over, we're going to go to the blue, and you're going to see right here I switched brushes, and that's because I found a similarity between the speed paint and the contrast paint. I had a little bit of water in my monster still from where I cleaned it out, switching from the yellow to the blue. I didn't want to get greens, and so I washed the brush, and that little bit of water made it completely unusable. It was speckling and spotting. It was pooling up into dots instead of going off into the recesses. And that's the same thing that contrast paint does. If you thin it with something besides contrast medium, um, you're going to have a bad day. It doesn't react well to water. And I feel like speed paint was probably actually worse because my brush was awfully dry. I couldn't even actually detect water in it or any moisture in it with my rubbing it on my skin or on the paper towel, but it definitely was too wet for the chemical makeup of the paint. So switching brushes, everything's back to normal. Looks super good. I'd say this magic blue is maybe close to achromatic blue in contrast, and it's better. Um, so I think the Zealot Yellow is marginally better, and I think the Magic Blue is definitely better. So that's good. Just more potential out of the line and out of the colors. So if you have a mix of the two, you're going to have more capability out of it. You can see the pooling looks really, really good. We're getting some good highs and some deep lows. So really solid, I think. The other thing that you got to compliment the army painters on is they come with balls. They're in dropper bottles. They're just easier to use and better to use than the contrast paints. Plus, they're half the price. Overall, I think Citadel really has their hands full with this line encroaching on their territory. Switching to the Holy White, and honestly, it's just cloudy gray. Um, it's it works no different than the Citadel white. and it looks about the same too. It just clouds everything up to a gray, and it almost demands that you go back and clean it up. I did do a little wet blending here with the blue. It was still wet, so I'm just wet blending with that and bringing it out to where the wind element and the water element are mixing together. That worked as expected quite well. Gave it a light blue tint. Now coming in with the gray, I just went full on. This is kind of like the Black Templar. It's the dark of the line, and honestly, it works about like the Templar. It's something not quite a wash, not quite a paint. Um, I think that if I was to paint this, I'd rather do it in like a P3 gray that I use, and then wash it. It would give the same effect, but it'd be a smoother paint job. Uh, but it is what it is. It's a good product, and it gets all three of those jobs done. You know, the wash, the base paint, and the highlights. It gets all three of them done in one go, just not to the same effect. So here he is with all the base coats on, so 4 colors. I think he's totally passable, but of course that's not good enough for me. So I'm going in now with the red. This is the blood red. I'm doing just the tips of the flames. I've also got the fire giant orange layered on there, and I'm just sprucing him up a little bit here. I think the red really made it pop. I mean, it's never gonna fix the deep spots have the wrong color in them. If you really wanted to do it, you'd have to paint the whole thing, base coat, details, and highlights. But I think this really sold it better. It took it from being a lion's mane and made it some flames. So I think it was the right way to go. And more importantly, the layering worked fine. It's no different than contrast. Laying them over the top was good. There's been a lot of complaints about the layering ability and reactivating the paint below. I could see that being a problem with whites. Um, but Army Painter is saying if you let it dry properly and set up properly, you're good. I had this in about 72 degrees, and I let it sit for about an hour to dry before I started layering, and I had no issues. And on the full paint job, I even go back in with dry brushing right over the top and do not have a reactivation issue. It was a light dry brushing, so maybe that's why. Um, but yeah, I didn't have the issue of it reactivating and ruining everything, which I was really worried about because I've seen some really great tests that show that it is a thing. So I think humidity's a factor, heat's a factor, and just being careful. If you're really worried about it, do a clear coat before you do your next coat, which kind of is opposite of what speed paint should be, but how hard is it to throw a clear coat over the top of it before you proceed? So overall, I'm going to say this mini come out pretty good for what it was. I think we got all the effects we were looking for. I think the quality's there, and some dry brushing and some details and some basing, and you wouldn't be able to tell that he was done with speed paint. You could tell maybe that he was done with some corner cutting, of course, but that's okay because we're all about getting good tabletop ready minis, and I think this guy fits the bill. If you want to see the full paint job, I'm going to post it separate with just some music behind it. So trying a few different things on the format. So this is really just focused on the speed paint part. But if you want to see his whole paint job and the basing, go ahead and go check that video out. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.